Jesus Christ. Is that it?
Alright, here's what's left of the frame. The mount there, and there's another mount there. So 8 points of contact, the bed. This structure is into the frame in 2 spots. I'm going to straighten that out, leave that, and flatbed it. These were the difficult ones, down around the fuel filter. But, oh yeah, there are a family of rats living up there. That's nice. Little hansavirus, anybody? And here it is all torn down. Gas tank is out, gas lines, brake lines free. Wire brush through the whole frame. Blasting it off with a little air hose now. Then I'm gonna sandblast it. Cheesy little sandblaster. That's the one off of Amazon for 18 bucks. Works pretty good. Have to upgrade the compressor a little bit, but little parts all cleaned up, wire brushed. If I'm lucky, I can get a coat of rust prevention on today before the rains come. Gas tank out. Protect as much as possible before I get a couple coats of paint on it. A couple days later, got the paint on. Well, it's not just one coat of paint. I'm using this stuff. It's a Osfo rust inhibitor. It's a formic acid. I was gonna try the baking soda and vinegar solution I saw on the internet, but then I remembered I'm a chemist. And I actually know what works and what doesn't work. Baking soda and vinegar, by the way, just neutralizes each other. This stuff is phosphoric acid based paint prepper. It basically seals up the rust, and there was a lot of rust. So really badly rusted areas like that, I ground in with a wire brush. I did the phospho treatments on them twice if it was a heavy rusted area. Let it set overnight. You can still see some of the oxidation, the white coming out. Hit it with a primer coat, hit it with a top coat. I use that. Here's a gas tank in. New hoses, new filter, new clamps. The hard part is getting to these hoses way up inside there. You have to do that when the tank's out. You gotta get the hoses in first. Then you got to remember the pattern of the hoses and evaporator lines and return lines. And you got to make sure that the wiring harness is in place before you get the tank up in there. And then dielectric grease before you connect the sender unit. Clip all that back in. Get your brakes. Brake lines. Replacing the soft brake lines. And this bracket here goes onto the protector plate, which goes around the bottom of the fuel tank, which is right over here. So that has 3 holes one side, 3 wider holes the other side. The wider holes fit on the frame here. It's 1, 2, and 3. Protect the front end of the tank, and the back one hits that bracket there. Alright, here's a fuel tank in. New bolts. That's the bracket that holds off the rock guard, the tank. Gotta remember to tighten the tank down first. The guard goes on, 3 new bolts there. So that's the brake mechanism here. Parking brake. All right, leaf springs back in. These are the Old Man Emus. I put the reconditioned drums back on to protect basically the splash plate, other things. Get these bushings with the Old Man Emus, but you got to remember to take these little tubes out of the old ones, which I had to burn out with a torch to get them out of the old ones and scrub them clean as best possible, lube them up. Those get pressed into there, and the whole assembly fits into that bracket. So the final product looks like this side. So you see the bushings in there, the bolt through, that sleeve is in between all that. All this is loosely connected with the U-bolts bolted down here. That's all shined up and ready for the shock to be mounted after the other leaf springs in. And it's hooked to the shackle in the back. Again, there's bushings on the shackles. You see them in yellow right there and there. But the rear shackles don't have that sleeve problem, so a little easier to deal with. And don't forget the... Okay, so second one in. That sleeve is between inside the bushings all hooked up. That's the hard one by the gas tank. And get a shot of that. Hooking up the U-bolts to the leaf springs, helpful to have a little clamp right there. That's a retractable wood clamp. It just pinches the U-bolt together so you can get those holes through here, because that U-bolt tends to spread a little wide as it comes over here. Bump stops lined up, hooked up, and the post on the right side, the correct side I should say, so that it matches up here for the eventual shock to go in. And last but not least, the yoke that goes in last. All right, in now the shock absorbers, top to bottom. Takes a little side to side playing with it. Everything's in place. U-bolts, that comes out. U-bolts are all same length, and then I torque down to 90 foot-pounds at the U-bolts, 47 foot-pound on the shocks here in the top, and we should be good for now. The shackle bushing is all in. Everything's pretty tight. Takes a lot of teeter-tottering and a lot of finessing and no bloody knuckles. Amazing. Good to wear gloves. Anyway, pretty smooth. Pretty decent. Brake line reattached. Soft brake line, brand new. Put that in, comes into the master. Back. Over here, got all the brakes torn apart, old brake parts, cylinder that's coming off, and new cylinders, new parts. So everything old is out, everything new is in. Tear that down, clean it. So it's all cleaned up. Scrubbed down with brake cleaner as best possible. Wire brushed it, treated it with a little ortho rust. Looks good in there. The rubber seals look real good for a 30-year-old truck. It's kind of pitted there, but expected a bit. As clean as I can get it. Got a new cylinder going there, new brake hardware, new brake shoes, using the old levers, of course, and adjuster arms. The springs go away, cable, that sort of stuff. Put it back in. Alright, new brakes together, finally. New hardware, new cylinders, new shoes. All new hardware, springs. These guys are not easy to put in, even with this special tool that you buy for about $8 at the auto parts store. Probably the most difficult thing I've done so far on this truck. But cleaned up, painted up, greased up, high temperature grease, and all put back together. So wheel cylinders, put the drums back on, the wheels on, bleed the brakes, put fuel in the tank, and drain the differential, change it out with 80 to 90 weight oil. Nothing was wrong with the differential fluid. It was a little bit thick down at the bottom, but on the plug, but no shards of metal, nothing like that. So somehow I got the fuel lines connected right. I got just a gallon or so in there, so the fuel light's on. But so far it runs.